In case you missed it, here's a Sports Animal Rewind.
Right now, let's talk some Major League Baseball. Spring training is underway. Grapefruit League in Florida, Cactus League in Arizona, and covering the Cactus League and Major League Baseball correspondent for MLB.com, longtime writer for the Houston Chronicle, Richard Justice, joins us here on the new Sentinel Sports page. Richard, Vince Ferrara, and Evan Woodbery, great to talk to you. Richard, how are you?
I'm doing good, and I appreciate you having me.
Oh, you're welcome. We appreciate your work and a long time with the Houston Chronicle, and now out in Arizona covering the Cactus League. And I want to bounce before we get to some of the teams out in the Cactus League. I want to ask you about a couple of the former Tennessee Volunteers, and one of them is R.A. Dickey, now with the Toronto Blue Jays. If you could, Richard, share some of your experiences with R.A. Dickey and what you think about that fit with the Blue Jays.
Well, I think he's the poster boy for what Major League Baseball would like every player to be. Performs great on the field, gives to the community off the field. He's had all kinds of adversity in his career. You know, it was in 2006 that Buck Showalter just called him in and said, "Hey, buddy, you ain't good enough. You got to go back to the minor leagues and learn a new pitch and learn a different way to pitch." And you know that's a tough thing to tell somebody. I mean, you're basically saying everything you've hoped and dreamed for is not going to happen unless you can reinvent yourself. He becomes a knuckleballer, comes back to the big leagues, gives up 6 home runs in his first start, and that's it. You know, he's done with the Rangers, bounced around. He basically has invented a new pitch. It's a knuckleball, but he throws it hard and he has command with it. It's unlike any other pitch ever. And I think, you know, the Toronto Blue Jays did something you just can't do. They added 600 innings to their starting rotation with Mark Burley, Josh Johnson, and R.A. Dickey. And I don't know that there's a player in Major League Baseball held in higher esteem than R.A. Dickey, and he's one of those guys we all root for. No matter whether you're a Yankee fan or Red Sox fan, it's impossible not to root for this guy.
How good is this Toronto Blue Jays team?
Well, I think in the case of both the Blue Jays and the Angels and the Dodgers, these 3 teams that have sort of been put together with a sledgehammer, we don't know. They've got to make the pieces fit. I think it works better in Toronto because the major pieces they added were all in the starting rotation, so it's less of a chemistry thing and all that. Johnson, Burley, and Dickey are known around baseball as great guys, great team guys. So I think if they can stay healthy, they're the best team in the American League East. You know, having said that, you could make a case for any team, maybe not Baltimore, any team in the American League East to finish first. The Rays are really good. So that's it. And, you know, I covered the Orioles in the 80s in the 90s, when Toronto was drawing $4 million a season. It's a great baseball town. It's one of the great cities in the world. So it would be cool to have some October baseball there. But the American League East, like a lot of the divisions, is a dogfight and probably a coin toss.
Joined by MLB.com correspondent Richard Justice, talks to Major League Baseball here on the new Sentinel Sports page of Vince Ferrara with Evan Woodbery. Another former Vol on that Toronto team is JP Arancibia. Talk about JP.
It hasn't been a good offseason for him. It wasn't a good offseason for him. I think he was in trade discussions around, I'm not. It's good that he landed where he did. He's going to get a chance to play and be part of a team that can grow together. But probably when you hear your name mentioned in trade discussions, it's probably not that comfortable. But you know what? He's got a chance. We can have this conversation a year from now, and he might have a World Series ring. So there you go.
Did you see another former Vol, Chase Headley, and led the National League in RBI last year? And did you see that from Chase Headley? What do you think about him as a ball player?
That's funny. I just asked Bud Black, his manager, how did this guy get so good? And he said basically he adjusted his swing to the ballpark, which is a very large ballpark in San Diego, and started learning what his gap power was. He always had power, but he learned that there are situations that you drive the ball, and he sort of reinvented himself. I mean, this guy's a great player. I mean, this guy's got when in every discussion San Diego would have over the winter, teams wanted Chase Headley, and I think they were tempted to trade him because they figured, we can turn him into 2 or 3 pretty good prospects. But I think they also looked at their club and said, you know what? When our pitchers are going to get healthy throughout this season, and we've got a chance to be good, and we got to stop. At some point, you have to stop rebuilding and tell your fans, hey, we're good enough to win. I think they're close, but obviously in that division, being good and being close is maybe not good enough.
Vince Ferrara, Evan Woodbery, joined by Richard Justice from MLB.com. A lot of Braves fans here, big Braves market. They've certainly completely changed the makeup of their team and adding the Upton brothers to that outfield with Jason Hayward. What do you think about the makeup of this Atlanta Braves team this year?
The Braves are one of those organizations that do everything right. It extends back to when Ted Turner first asked Bobby Cox to build a great organization, and he did that, and then John Sherrills continued doing it. They're remarkable, the winter they had to keep the payroll almost neutral, and they have a dynamic, obviously, I know you guys talked about it a bunch, to have the two Uptons and Jason Hayward in the outfield. That's a dynamic group. I love their pitching, what Chris Medlin and Mike Minor have done to their careers. So they're in the conversation. If you're going to have – baseball is different now than maybe 10 or 20 years ago. If we're going to have a conversation about the best team in baseball, there's probably 9 teams, maybe. 6 of them are in the National League, and the Braves are one of those teams. So I think, like in the National League East, I think what's going to decide the race has yet to be decided. That could be a move, could be an injury, something like that. But they're right there. They're in the mix. Frank Wren has done a fantastic job taking over for maybe one of the 2 best general managers in the last 50 years.
What do you think of Freddie Gonzalez as a manager?
Love him, because I think the most important thing now for a manager is to communicate with players and to be able to be honest with them and be able to deliver bad news, good news, and he's a people person. To know Freddie is to like Freddie. Because, see, in the computer age, you can hire people, you can have a guy upstairs help you with your lineups, with your matchups. A lot of those things are dictated, computerized. The Tampa Bay Rays are very sophisticated in it. But what can't be replaced is the human touch. You got to make the guys buy into the team concept. You got to make the guys all pull on the same end of the rope, and Freddie has the ability to do that. Fans, I think, focus on did he send the right guy up to pinch hit in the 8th inning and all that. To me, that's much less important than do you get a good, consistent effort, and do the guys who are not playing become a problem. And Freddie's one of those guys that gets the best out of his guys.
Talking Major League Baseball with MLB.com correspondent Richard Justice here on the New Sentinel Sports page. Last thing on the Braves, certainly they have a lineup where they can go deep and have some big hitters with the Upton brothers, but also it looks like on paper an awful lot of strikeouts too. Is that a big concern for you for this Braves team this year?
Less than maybe years past. I think you just have to look at the whole production. Like Justin Upton's going to strike out a lot, but a very productive guy. I remember talking to Billy Bean late last season, talking about his offense, and he said, we do 3 things. We walk, we hit home runs, and we strike out, and that's a very efficient way to play baseball. You cut a lot of the noise out in the middle. So I think you have to look at if you walk, if you hit home runs, you have to. We're in an era where you live with strikeouts.
2 of those 3 things are good. So
yeah, exactly, and it just comes down to productivity. People, I think fans now are sophisticated enough to not look at batting average. You look at on-base percentage or OPS and all that, and you can determine. And it's going to come down to, hey, how good is the team going to be?
Talking to Richard Justice, talking some Major League Baseball. A couple of teams that are of regional interest, the Cincinnati Reds, Walt Jocketty there, changing that team as over the last few years. What do you think about this year's Cincinnati Reds team?
Love them. I think it's interesting to see what Aroldis Chapman does in the rotation. I think the way, from the moment Walt signed him, he saw him as a guy that was a potential number 1 starter, a David Price type. And I think they're going to exhaust every opportunity. I don't know that Dusty Baker is exactly on board with taking a great closer and making him a starter, but the value is in being a starter, and they're going to exhaust every possibility. And I think they're one of those teams that really don't have any holes, and they're probably the favorite going in to the net to win the NL Central. But the Cardinals are good. In each of those divisions in the National League, there are at least 2 teams, and in the National League West, I think Arizona's really good, that are in the mix. So if everybody stays healthy, it's going to be a dogfight.
Richard, I'm wondering, because I think Aroldis Chapman is one of the most intriguing stories of this coming years. If you're in Cincinnati's shoes right now, do you make that move to the rotation, or do you say, hey, we've got an elite closer, let's not mess with what's working?
No, an elite closer is maybe has the value of a number 3 or number 4 starter. If you can get 200 innings out of a guy, you get 200 innings out of a guy. And, let me just say also about the Reds, they have one glaring weakness last year. They went the distance with the same 5 starters. Can they do that again? I don't know. But they have one glaring weakness as the leadoff, and Walt fixed that by getting Shin-Soo Choo from Cleveland. They're going to lose something defensively without Drew Stubbs in center, and, I don't know what the plus and minus of that will be, but he makes their lineup really good with Votto and Bruce and Phillips and those guys behind him. And he puts Phillips in the number 2 hole where right now if you're picking one guy to have a monster year, it'll be Brandon Phillips, who's going to hit between Choo and Votto and in front of Bruce. So they're awfully good. Yeah, I think you see if a guy can start,
Richard Justice talking to Major League Baseball with us, correspondent for MLB.com. A couple other teams, the Chicago Cubs. There's Cubs fans everywhere. How much improved is this Cubs team, Richard, and maybe what's the best case scenario for them potentially?
Well, I think we learned last year in watching Oakland play, watching Tampa, that if you can pitch, we're in an era that if you can pitch and catch the ball, the Rays preach on the first day of spring training. Joe Madden tells his guys, we have 2 rules. Run hard to first place and play defense. If they had one of the great pitching staffs in the history of baseball last year, the Rays did. So if you can pitch, you got a chance. And the Cubs have improved their pitching. And even a team like the Houston Astros, they look at I think we all think they're going to lose 100 plus. They like their pitching. So I like the Cubs pitching. I think they're getting there. I think Theo Epstein's going to do it. I think you probably will see the real progress next year. It's a very tough division. But they're going to be good sooner than people think, and I would think next year. But I think they have a chance to be competitive. Listen, it's hard to go through a rebuilding. When you take a guy like Theo Epstein or the manager Dale Swan, these are very competitive people, and to get your head handed to you night after night is tough. So they were disappointed they didn't get Rue, the Korean pitcher that the Dodgers ended up with, but they're headed in the right direction.
You talked to Ron Washington last week and wrote about him and the Texas Rangers as well. New look with losing stars off of that team and longtime Rangers. What do you think about the Texas Rangers?
Yeah, that division is fascinating in how to build a roster. The Angels are doing it with a sledgehammer. Just here, pay the most money and just see if we can make it all fit. The A's are just a real artistic roster in that they have platoons all over the field. They have a lot of pitching depth, and they make it work. The Rangers are a combination. The Rangers have money to spend, but they had the guts, and sometimes the hardest thing to do is they walked away from Josh. They did not think Josh Hamilton was worth what the Angels gave him. They were disappointed not to get Zach Greinke. They were disappointed not to get Justin Upton. But what you're left with is if Lance Berkman is productive another year, the lineup is awfully good, really good. And they have maybe the best rotation in the division with Harrison, Holland, and Darvish. So if I had to pick, I would pick the Rangers to win the American League West today. But if Oakland won, if the Angels won, it wouldn't surprise me. They're a great organization. What they have is they have some kids, especially a kid named Jerkison Profar and another named Mike Holt, that they did not trade over the winter. They could have gotten Justin Upton if they would have parted with those guys. They decided not to trade them, so they have flexibility going forward, and they have money to spend, so they're rolling right now.
Richard, I know there's still time here in spring training. Things will change. There'll probably be some injuries, and we'll see these rosters take shape and starters. But right now, who do you think is the best team in baseball, and then who is the best drafting team in Major League Baseball, in your opinion?
The best team in baseball is like I said, there's 9 or 10 teams, but the Washington Nationals would be atop my power ranking.
Okay.
Great rotation, great deep bullpen, good lineup, and they have a great feel. When you're in their clubhouse, it feels right with Zimmerman and LaRoche and those guys. They sort of have it going right now. It's a great time to be a Washington National. There are a bunch of other teams you could argue for, the Reds being one of them, obviously, even the Cardinals. the team that has drafted the best probably over the last 10 years would be, I would say, a handful of teams at the top of that. Probably the Rays come to mind because they've gotten more out of it at the big league level. The San Francisco Giants were primarily a homegrown team that's won the World Series 2 of the last 3 years. So you go with the results on the field. You know, the Houston Astros are going to probably have the number 1 pick 3 years in a row, so they better be the number. If I answer that question a year and a half from now, the answer better be the Houston Astros.
That has been a struggle that you've seen firsthand in recent years. Hey, Richard, really enjoy your work, respect your opinions, and hopefully we can catch up with you again soon. Thanks for the time, Richard.
Okay, sure. Appreciate you having me.
All right, that is Richard Justice. You can find his work, MLB.com, and then at Richard Justice on Twitter. Excellent follow, terrific information.
The power of sports.
Have you heard about it?
The Sports Animal.